And we're live. And hello there, and good afternoon. And you're very welcome along once again to the How to Stay Sane in a Pandemic webcast with me, Barbara Scully. So, as I can see you all popping along, so come in and get comfortable, make yourself comfortable for the next 30 minutes or so as we enjoy some chat. We are now broadcasting live on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and we are on YouTube. I also want to welcome anybody who'll watch this back at a later stage, as I know many of you do. So thank you also for joining us. And I want to give a very special welcome, as per usual, to listeners to Dublin South FM. This webcast broadcasts as a radio program on Dublin South FM on Saturday at 3:30 in the afternoon. So if that's how you're hearing this, well, you're very welcome. And thank you also for joining us. If you do enjoy this webcast, and if you have enjoyed other webcasts, you could spread the word, spread the links, and spread the word in the old-fashioned word-of-mouth way. That would be doing me a tremendous favor. Previous episodes of the webcast are now up on my website, which is barbarascully.com, and this particular one will join on there tomorrow. So if anybody, if you're directing people and they can't find it on Twitter or they're not on Twitter, barbarascully.com is where they will find it. Okay, so last March, I had the pleasure of meeting and interviewing my guest today, who is Dr. Lollie Mancey. I interviewed her for an event for Dún Laoghaire Rathdown Chamber of Commerce, and I was really taken with her positivity and her enthusiasm and her ability to tell a great story. I think I said in one of the promos that I did that, I believe in this world there are three types of people. They're the ones who you spend time with and you feel exhausted at the end of it. You're drained and you're like, oh my God. And then there's the people who really don't really make any difference one way or the other. And then there are people like you, Lollie Mancey, who you spend time in your company and you come away buzzing, like as if you've been plugged into an electric socket. Just to tell people a little bit about who you are, you're an academic who teaches social innovation in UCD. You are an expert in rites of passage and a celebrant of weddings and funerals, and you are a cultural anthropologist. So look, it's really great to see you. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to chat with you some more. So thanks a million for joining us today.
My absolute pleasure. I love chatting.
Yes, indeed. Listen, I just want to start with an easy question for 10, which is Prince Philip's funeral, which was on last weekend, and which I will freely admit I was glued to the entirety of, because I love the way the Brits do pomp and ceremony and the precision with which they do everything.
Sorry.
But I was also struck that as a funeral, and we in Ireland pride ourselves on being very good with death and funerals and all the rest of it, but I was struck by the fact that the funeral, because of its kind of pared back nature, seemed terribly intimate. What was your reaction with your professional hat on to it?
I thought it was beautiful, and I thought that it reflected what we hope we know about him, which was that he wanted it that way. And I'm a huge believer that you should have what you want, both at every stage, really, especially when it comes to death. You're right, we do funerals and death very well in Ireland. We might not do grieving so well, but that's for a story for another day. I loved it, and I thought what was really beautiful about it was, firstly, the fact that we could see something that was so grandiose and it be reflected so intimately that we could be present. And I thought that was a major privilege. But I also thought there were some very touching moments. And so it was the personalization aspects that they did that really got to me. And this is a major trend in funerals now and here and elsewhere. The first thing that I noticed, or that was sort of spoken about in the narrative, was that in his carriage seat, there was his hat and his gloves folded and his blanket. But next to them was a tiny red box of sugar lumps, and for the horses, that he would have had in his pocket to give to them. And I just thought, in terms of mementos, you could have put the hat and the gloves there, and that was quite formulaic and quite sort of obvious. But
expected,
the little box of sugar lumps, I thought was gorgeous. There was other things, of course, his memorial sword. He had a custom-made Range Rover hearse. That's another thing moving forward. People are starting. I know Massey Brothers have a motorbike hearse. People are starting to have a think about. We always took it for granted in Ireland that the funeral is a certain way. It's done by a priest, it's done in a church, and actually that's all changing now, which is really interesting. And one of my companies, I train people to do funeral celebrancy, and we talk very much about reflecting the life authentically lived. But for me, it was that little box of sugar lumps.
Actually, that's really interesting what you say about transport, because I did notice, and if I did known I was going to mention this, I would have researched who the person was. But somebody died in Dublin in the last 2 weeks who I think was a cyclist or a
On the
campaigner for cycling,
bicycle hearse. Yeah.
and they had the bicycle hearse. And
Yeah.
again, like I thought, and it doesn't, sometimes when you think of these different ways of doing things that we've always done and that we're used to seeing done in a particular, as you say, formulaic way. And
Yeah.
sometimes you think if you move out of that, you're kind of fearful that it'll be in some way disrespectful. But in
We
actual
almost need to
fact,
give
it's
ourselves
the
permission,
opposite.
We people go, I didn't know I could do anything differently. Do I have permission? Permission from whom? This is the thing,
Yeah.
that the church has such a stronghold, in our psyche and the way that we think. And there's a lovely, I don't know that we would ever do this, but so in different cultures, it's phenomenal to sort of see the different ways that they address life and death, of course, and the rites of passage. There's an amazing group of Maori women who started in New Zealand they were left because women most of the time live longer than their partners. So they were left, they were widows. And they all sat around and they thought, what could we do as a sort of a moment, a community sort of initiative, rather than just sort of sitting around drinking tea and having the chats. And what they decided was they would make their own coffins. And so they got a carpenter on board and they spend all of the time painting them and putting on whatever they want. And then they're ready. And I spoke to one lady and I said, what do you do with it? And she said, well, sometimes they're in people's sheds. She says, I keep mine as the table, the coffee table.
Isn't that brilliant?
They're brightly painted and they've got pictures of their grandchildren on and all the rest of it. But for these ladies, it was about community, about getting together, about having great chats and great laughs about what they were doing, but also embracing their own mortality. And let's face it, it's inevitable.
And, that's a really interesting point, because I think, part of what they're doing is removing the fear that many people have as they get older in life of death, and bringing it into the present and making it part of
having a bit more
something.
Control over the last word as well, about what gets said and what's done. And, I often think it's a shame we can't be at our own funerals. That's a great party to be at, hearing all the stories about you. There was a lady in New York who did that. She actually threw her funeral party before she died so she could be there. And I think that's lovely.
I'm not sure about that, but yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but I'm not sure I'd actually like to be there. I do think, though, and it's interesting, like I've attended many funerals with my elderly mother, and she always says to me, if you stand up at my funeral and make out like I was a saint, I'm going to come back to haunt you. She said, I want you telling it like it is.
Yeah. And listen, the modern funeral is going that way. You might have a priest, but who's on side with that. But very often the eulogy will be a much smaller part with the church. So in the ceremonies that are going forward now, the life story, or the eulogy, as it's still probably called predominantly, is the telling of, where else do we get to tell oral histories? Where else do we get to tell this? Sometimes it's only in the funeral, and we're not even present hearing the story of our life, or indeed the stories written from someone that only knew us at age 30 or 40, or a child that knew us. They don't know all of us, our entirety. So yeah, I'm all about the storytelling.
That's really interesting. And so in a general way, then, moving away from just funerals, because I know this is something you're interested in, and I mentioned to you, and I know I've mentioned it online a few times, that I actually mentioned that I had written a book. I actually didn't realize when I hadn't written a book, I'd written a draft, and I'm now back at chiseling it away. But anyway, one of the themes of that is storytelling, because I'm very struck by the fact that women very often, until relatively recently, and it's starting to change, but very slowly, tell our stories to ourselves in these safe spaces where it's just women. So therefore, the stories don't get to change the national conversation because they're being heard in these more intimate settings. How important is telling the stories of our own individual experiences and our own lives?
Well, I think there's a fine line between, that old saying, sure, we don't want your life story. We don't want to bore everybody with all of the details about everything. But at the same time, also, we do need to own our story, and a lot of the times for women, the things that are chapters become the central narrative for them, and I'm often saying to people, now this equates to business as well, though, I'm always saying to businesses, you should be telling your story of how you came to be and what your values are. But it's the same when it comes to people. If you've had a difficult time, that's a chapter in your story. That's not your whole story. That's a moment in time. You've other chapters, you've other things going on, and you will have more as you write it. So I think firstly, we get stuck up with that. So we get stuck on those sometimes. I think the other thing about owning your story, and one of my favorite quotes in the world, Oscar Wilde, be you, everyone else is taken. We need to own ourselves, authentically represent ourselves. We're very often showing a part of ourselves, a performative part. This is journalist me, or this is academic me, or whatever you want to say. But we're not usually being heard just relaxed and telling our story. That's what you mean, that it's kind of a public-private dichotomy there. More and more now, women are coming forward to say, and it's not even just women. People need to talk more about what's going on with them. We need to care less in terms of other people's opinions. And we also don't know how much that might affect other people. So sometimes I talk about things that have challenged me. Other people then will feel, oh, I can now open up to say these things challenged me. And I think that that's the dialogue that we need. This idea that, we would all come out of COVID a stone lighter and knowing how to make banana bread is completely ridiculous. We're pushing ourselves, competing against ourselves all of the time. And we need to not be doing so much. We beat ourselves with our own stick a lot of the time, thinking everyone else is doing better. Everyone else is X, Y, and Z. And it's absolutely not true. All of us are insecure. All of us have bad days and good days. And if you think that we're on this, we imagine we're on a spectrum somewhere between depression and flourishing, and we're somewhere in between that, what we are now. And I got this term from an article in the New York Times, which I loved. We're languishing. And I love that word. Yeah. We're right in the middle of feeling a kind of a lack of joy right now, a bit of a bit meh. At the same time, it's a liminal space. We don't need to be toxically positive all of the time. It's horrific when you hear someone going, oh, you'll be fine, you'll be fine, you'll be fine all of the time. We don't need that. What we want is an authentic representation of, I'm not having a good day, but that's okay. Tomorrow might be better, or the next week might be better, or who do I need to reach out to talk to? And the same vice versa. If I'm having a good day, who am I sharing that with? Some of the time, I'm online. The only people I would be speaking to are my students I'm engaging with professionally. And if I was online with them for 6 months every morning and I was toxically positive every minute of the day, they would hate me, it would be, it would be inauthentic. So what we try to do is we try to sort of say, listen, wherever you're at, that's okay. And it'll change. That's all we know.
That's really interesting. What do you think will be, for us as individuals, especially here in Ireland, where we have, where we have endured, if you like, some of the longest lockdowns in the world? Mm-hmm. Do you think that most of us are going, because I am hearing people saying that, will we be able to come out of this and go back to normal individually? In other words, or will we have this fear now of being close to people, of getting, being in a crowd, or, will we be able to socialize? Do you think that there are going to be problems of that kind of nature after this eventually is over?
Do you know that famous poster, post the end of the war, of the sailor kissing the girl in the street?
Yeah.
I think in our minds, a bit of us, we think it's all going to be like that. Like we're all going to be rushing out, grabbing each other, hugging complete strangers. It's completely not. But it's our natural state to be connected. And I'm a firm believer that actually addiction is the opposite of connection. That when you're disconnected, then you can start to have issues in life. We need to feel connected in some way, shape, or form to a higher purpose in order to make life meaningful. And I think what we've been shown during this time is that we care more about our communities than we ever could have imagined. We're really fighting for our local survival at the moment, and that's been brilliant in terms of local innovation and businesses. But also, we've reached out to people more than we ever have done before. Now, I don't mean all of the time, but we've connected to people. I'm in touch with my very good friend Jackie in Sydney. I'm in touch with my other very good friend Ange over in Brighton. We're checking in with each other. We're saying, "Are you all right?" And I probably wouldn't have done that in other times, and vice versa to me, and so I think that's, our friendships have become deeper potentially. Others have fallen by the wayside. They haven't sort of gone through the same process. There'd be one or two people I would speak to on a regular basis, and they have been surprising to me because they wouldn't have been people that were that much in my life beforehand, but are now. So there's this sort of sense of I think in the UK, they used to call it the blitz spirit. In the crisis time when it was all new, in our brains, we have fight or flight, even in an evolutionary way. And we have something in our brain called an amygdala, which is highlighted. It highlights itself. It shows up on a CAT scan when we're in fight or flight survival mode, such as, oh my God, there's a pandemic, we need to do something. We all rush out and bought toilet paper and the crazy things that we did that we can now laugh at. We've moved away from that now. We're very good then. We know what to do. It's the time after that, the malaise, the difficult, the settling time that we're coming out of. We're emotionally exhausted and we need to be very gentle with ourselves about that. But I think it's that we will connect in a meaningful way with those people we're dying to see. And then I think there's just going to be this incredible summer of love. And again, I really hope that I can get over to the West Coast and see friends, eat oysters, look at the Atlantic, get in the Atlantic, all of these things. I think that I appreciate life more now because I realize it could be very, very different. So that's not to say that, we're going to be, in this state of ecstasy, walking around the streets, smiling and happy all of the time. But a friend of mine posted up yesterday on Instagram that she was suddenly realizing that the older people that were around and starting to venture out on the streets, they've made it. And that is really brilliant. They've made it. We've made it together. So look, it's been incredibly, incredibly tough. But imagine what our great grandchildren will say about this. Oh, my great grandmother lived through the pandemic. We don't, and it wasn't, how has it been? It's been really difficult. But for a lot of people, it's been all right.
Yeah, I was watching a guy, I think he was a comedian or something there earlier today online somewhere. And he was saying that, those of us who are adults now grew up with our parents saying, if we moaned about anything like, not wanting to have to, walk to school in the rain, and they'd be saying, we walk to school in the rain every day with bare feet and yada, yada. And they're saying it's going to be nothing on
You're bored now. You should have been in the pandemic.
We lived through a pandemic where we couldn't go out for 2 years and we had to stay in our house and we weren't allowed to do whatever. Do you think there will be an element of, almost like a PTSD after, a post-traumatic stress after
undoubtedly. And I think that the people that have coped will probably find that they, or feel that they've been in sort of autopilot coping, will probably find that when things do sort of stream back to, what we were more used to, I hate that word normal, try not to use it.
So do I,
that what we were more used to, we'll actually find that then there is a downtime. There is a sort of an aftershock to all of this. I mean, of course. I mean, we need to be very mindful of each other as we move forward. But again, it's fascinating. What's going to happen with all of those offices down in the IFSC? What's going to happen, with all of the retail that's changing? There's lots of, I'm in the innovation space, lots of exciting stuff coming up, which is just brilliant. And a lot of it's based around social enterprise, helping each other, making things more meaningful. So I'm an optimist. I would definitely say that I think we can come out of this as long as we don't just forget about it and all go crazy and drink loads of gin and tonic and then, carry on as we used to. I think, as we can carry some of it forward, some of the better bits of it, definitely.
And you mentioned social innovation there, our local innovation there earlier, and social innovation, I suppose. And certainly, like anecdotally, that would be something I would notice on the ground, that we suddenly are now much more conscious of trying to support the local business, the local restaurant. We're saying, God, we never got a takeout from that one, so we must, there's a much greater awareness of, as you said, our local community, and a kickback away from the big retail giants, that we actually now want that local connection.
We need it. We desperately crave it. There was definitely days when the only person I spoke to was the butcher in Kells. I didn't know him before, and now I know him now. So look, it's down to that. I think it's that we didn't really see what we had. We didn't really appreciate what we had. We were on a hamster wheel. I was on the M3, M50, up to 3 hours a day. That's bonkers trying to get into UCD. Now I know almost all of the people in my local area, where my local town is Kells. I've reached out to them. I'm trying to help some of them reconfigure, older people who wouldn't be sort of used to going online or click and collect or other things like that. But there's this sort of, I know when we go up and down the M50, it says hold firm. And I'm always a bit annoyed by it, but because I'm just like, we're holding on, we couldn't be any firmer. If we gripped any tighter, we'd be gone. But I think what it is what are the things that matter on a daily basis? And part of that is communication. And part of that is true, authentic connection, which is a rare thing. But we actually have been reticent in connecting to the things that we had around us. We really have. And we took our eye off the ball a little bit there in terms of when things morphed into online shopping and it was all Amazon. And my God, my poor postman's working 6 days a week. And, you know, it was dropping tiny packages from Wish that my daughter had ordered. And I was like, God, what are we doing? Yeah. This sort of mass consumerism that we started with, that's tailed off now. People are making meaningful purchases, meaningful decisions. The future of business, and certainly small startup business, is about authentically growing your community and giving people something that they can experience. I'll tell you a lovely example. I reach out. I'm a bit of a stalker on LinkedIn to new entrepreneurs, and I love to bring them into the Innovation Academy if I can to talk to my students. And I reached out to a guy yesterday called Chad, who has a converted horse box down in Macross called the Hungry Donkey. He was a chef. Obviously, he's not working as a chef in a hotel anymore or a restaurant. So he started his own business. And all I kept hearing about was this incredible menu of this simple menu, but like local whole foods, really, really well cooked. I looked at them on Instagram. My mouth was watering. So I reached into on LinkedIn and said, will you have a chat with me about your journey? And people are so happy to share. I was at a difficult point. I've thought of a solution. I didn't know if it was going to work. I gave it a go. Oh my God, it's working, and now loads of people are contacting me, like me and other people, and I think this is absolutely wonderful. We've kind of boiled things down to the lowest common denominator of what we need. And, there's lots of pop-ups, lots of innovation, lots of exciting, people that couldn't break into retail before because of those ridiculous rents the landlords were charging, and I think we're going to see a very different Ireland moving forward. And I'm excited about that.
And if that's all going to be, I mean, as well as it being better for individuals and small entrepreneurs, it's also ultimately going to be far better for the planet. Will address, if people aren't commuting, people, are much more rooted in their communities. And as you say, these local kind of much more sustainable businesses.
Much more sustainable. Yeah, absolutely. We've got an amazing opportunity in Ireland. We're small compared on the global stage. We've got an amazing opportunity to trial things here and see if they work. Mana Drone were actually part of, they were trialing their drone testing in UCD. They're part of Nova in UCD. I didn't know what they were going to be doing or even, where they might be able to go when COVID hit. And they've just paired, they're a new startup. They've just paired with Ben & Jerry's to deliver ice cream. Wow. I'm so excited. I don't know if they'll be coming to me, but imagine you can order a Ben & Jerry's if you're in Dublin, and a drone will come and it'll drop down. And I've seen them do it. They're doing it at the moment. They're trialing it. Drop down string. And what will happen is your ice cream's in the freezer box. It doesn't get better than that.
Do you know what? I mean, that's all great, but I'd be really excited if they could manage to do that with a Teddy's 99 from Deliri. If I could get one of those on a drone here into my back garden, I would be in heaven then.
Anything's possible.
The time is flying away. What would you say to somebody who might be watching this, who has a small business idea or has what they would consider maybe a mad idea, and they're just afraid to take that first step, to put their toe in the water and to start that journey towards entrepreneurship? What would you say to them?
An idea is an idea. It's not a business, and I would get a lot of people trying to, contacting me saying, I've got a brilliant idea. And I'm like, well, there are so many. So there are processes that you can go through. So in the Innovation Academy in UCD, we sign students up and they go through a process with us, which works out where they go into customer discovery, and which we call an empathy phase. Are people going to want this? Are they going to buy it? Can we trial it and test it very quickly, very cheaply, and see if people can sort of test out before they decide to put financial backing behind it if they have any, and so there are many colleges. Trinity Tangent would do the same, UCD Innovation Academy, Smurfit Business College, your local enterprise center, a really good place to start. They're free a lot of the time, those courses there. Most of my students would come through the Springboard, which is government funded, so the courses are also complimentary for them as well while they're there if they qualify. So we would have at the moment a lot of students that have been made unemployed because of COVID. So a lot of my students are in hospitality or travel, for example. They have a huge skill set, and they're able. These
are all ages. You're not talking about.
Oh yes, 25 to 65 and over. Yeah. I remember a lovely guy who came to me at 62, and he said he's only come into the college because his wife said she wants him out from under her feet. So he said, I'll drive you mad instead. At 62, I said to him, we worked through the process of the course. And then I said to him, what's the dream? What do you really want? If you have another 10 years, what do you want to be doing? And he said, innovating. I'm an inventor. I like to make stuff. He applied to Dyson, to the university in Dyson. They have their own university college, and he's now in there, and he's actually working as a coordinator in there in Dyson. So he moved his whole family over at age 62 and started.
No way.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That is brilliant. Listen, we have to get to the nuts and bolts of the kind of the questions I always ask, which is, are you a reader? Or are you somebody who reads for pleasure? I mean, obviously you read for your work, but are you a reader for pleasure?
Two things going on at the minute. I'm a huge fan of Audible while I'm walking, so at the moment I'm listening to The Beauty of Living Twice, which is Sharon Stone's book, which is, it's fantastic, about what she had to go through. And again, who would have known the authentic life, of the one that she lived versus the one that we thought she lived. And another amazing book I'm reading at the moment by an English author, Mr. Gupta Goes to Sea, and it's by Paul Comerford, Comerford, and it's his first book, and it's a rip roaring read. I love a book that's unexpected with twists and turns. So
sorry, give me the author on that. Give me the author on that again.
Comerford, Comerford. Mr. Gupta Goes to the Sea. And it's glorious.
Goes to the sea. Lovely. That sounds like one I would definitely enjoy. Okay, so you mentioned that you listen to audiobooks when you're out walking. Other than that, are you one for podcasts or have you?
All the time. All the time.
Okay.
My two favorites, Women's Hour, BBC 4.
Of course.
And then a Dublin-based podcast, Petty Little Things, which is two amazing drag queens that had residencies at the George.
Sorry, you just broke up there for a minute. I think it's my Wi-Fi.
You're okay.
Oh, no. Okay, you're just reconnecting. Okay, come back. Sorry, I'm going to have to ask you just to go back a little bit there. For some reason, my Wi-Fi dropped. So
you're okay.
BBC4 Women's Hour.
Women's Hour. I always listen to it. Always love it. It's absolutely amazing. And my second one, Petty Little Things, which is on Spotify. It's by two Dublin drag queens, Davina Devine and Victoria's Secrets. And it's I can't wait for it to come out every week. It's laugh out loud funny every single time. Just glorious.
I love Davina Devine.
Both of them are amazing. Yeah,
they're brilliant.
It feels like a chat in their living room that you're part of, or you're listening into, which is glorious. And they have erotas of the week, which I'm always going, oh God, I have a long list.
And come here, would you be somebody now in the evening that would plug into the old Netflix, or have you favorite box sets?
I don't think there's anything I haven't seen at this stage like the rest of the world. I think we've seen absolutely everything. I'm a big fan of documentaries. I would like them. I think in another life I might have been a lawyer, so I like to think about that sort of stuff, but nothing I'm watching at the moment. In fact, I'm actually looking forward to not sitting down and switching on Netflix now the weather's nicer. I'm looking forward to a gin and tonic in the garden when I finish work.
Yeah. No, I think that sounds like really, really good advice. What have you personally, Lollie, do you think learned from this last year and a half?
Isolation's not healthy. I think that's one thing. I think there's a very big difference between being alone and being lonely. And I think, we haven't been so brave before at times when we've been lonely to connect with other people. And I think that's really important. I appreciate my friendships now more than ever before. They're literally, when we say my tribe, people that will hold you up and know you. I rang my friend a few weeks ago. I was walking around the beautiful forest in Virginia. I was just blubbing. I was just walking around the forest. I couldn't even think of a particular reason why. And I just rang her and knew that it was absolutely fine that I was blubbing for no particular reason on the phone to her. And then I was fine a few days later. It's really good to get it out. Don't hold stuff in. But again, what have I learned? I think I've probably reconfigured a little bit more about what I want. I want to meet more new people. I want to be part of life. I'm not ready to be retired off at any particular stage and furloughed. I think I can't wait to start traveling again and meet more people and sort of see what other people are doing in other countries, because we've only had news, and that's never a good thing. I don't watch the news ever. completely stopped it. And those
Yeah.
awful numbers, I don't look at them anymore either. Do you know, here's
me
another
too.
thing. They never told us before in Ireland how many people died on a daily basis.
I know.
So
No,
I
I
don't
must
want to
say.
know now, and I don't want to know moving forward.
No.
It's the same. I know, and I think if you haven't got anything nice to say, then you probably shouldn't be saying anything at all at this
Yeah,
particular
no,
stage.
here. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Lollie, are you Australian or are you Kiwi or?
No, I'm actually English. I spent a long time growing up, but I grew up in Sydney. My late teens and early 20s in Sydney, and I'm in Ireland 20 years last Christmas.
Oh, and I was
So
just wondering, was Australia on your hit list for as soon as you can travel back? Are you missing it?
I am, and I would like to think that perhaps I might get over there next year. So, but I don't know if you've seen the joyous scenes of people between
I
New
couldn't
Zealand.
watch them.
Oh,
I couldn't watch them. I have a daughter and grandchildren in Australia, and
oh, so
yeah,
good,
I
so
keep
beautiful.
saying our day will come, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
We,
something to look
we,
forward to.
I hope we'll never take life for granted again. That's what I hope moving
Yeah,
forward.
yeah,
It's an inevitable thing that we all have a mortality. So let's make the best of it, what we
yeah,
have.
yeah. Yeah. Perfect words to finish on. Listen, as I knew, this half an hour has actually flown past,
Okay, yeah,
and I'm raging it's over. So we might have to do it again at some stage to discuss
anytime.
all the bits we didn't discuss. Lolly, thank you so much. I really appreciate your
My absolute
taking
pleasure.
the time today, and I love talking to you. And keep doing what you're doing because you're an absolute force of nature, an absolute force of nature.
Right back
So
at you,
listen.
Barbara Skelly.
Listen, thank you to all of you who joined me, and thank you to Tom Baldwin for telling me that you could still hear Lolly while I couldn't. So it was obviously my end that fell down. So thank you for joining us. I see Deirdre Smith joined us, and Caroline Grace Cassidy joined us, and Susan Burke joined us, and Andrea Smith. And I appreciate everybody else who joined us as well. So look, thank you all. I'll be here again next week with another guest for you to meet, and we shall discuss more ways to stay sane in a pandemic. But in the meantime, mind yourself, stay safe, and stay well.